The first day of 8th grade at Willow Creek Middle School was just like every other year. Kids rushed through the halls, laughing and shouting, lockers slammed shut, and teachers yelled for everyone to get to class. It was loud, messy, and exciting, at least for most people. Then there was Ethan. He stood out right away, but not because he tried to. Ethan was the new kid. He was small and thin, with dark brown hair that always seemed a little messy, like he didn't care what it looked like. His backpack was way too big for him, and he clutched it tight against his chest like he was afraid someone might grab it. While other kids formed groups, laughing and whispering about summer vacations, Ethan sat by himself at the edge of the courtyard, staring at a worn-out notebook. The thing was, he didn't look weird or anything. He just didn't talk. He barely even looked at anyone. Some kids thought he was stuck up. Others thought he was scared. A few just ignored him completely. But there was one person who noticed him right away, and not in a good way. Mason Burke. Mason had been the king of Willow Creek since 5th grade. He was tall, strong, and had a smile that fooled almost every teacher. He wasn't always mean, but if Mason decided he didn't like you, your life got really hard, really fast. He had a way of making everyone around him laugh at someone else's expense. People followed him because it was easier than standing up to him. It didn't take long for Mason to set his sights on Ethan. The first time Mason bumped into Ethan in the hallway, he laughed like it was an accident. The second time, he accidentally knocked Ethan's books out of his hands. By the end of the first week, Mason was calling him mute in front of everyone. I remember watching it happen. Everyone did. Some kids laughed, some looked away. I just sat there, feeling sick to my stomach. Ethan never fought back. He just picked up his stuff and kept walking, like nothing happened. But the way he gripped his backpack a little tighter every time Mason came near told a different story. At the time, none of us knew the truth about Ethan. Not yet. As the weeks went by, things only got worse for Ethan. At first it was just name-calling. Mason would shout "Hey, mute" across the cafeteria, making his friends snicker while Ethan kept his head down. Then it turned into little things, shoving him in the hallway, kicking his chair in class, grabbing his hat and tossing it across the room. The teachers barely noticed. If they did, Mason always had some fake excuse ready. "I was just kidding around, Mrs. Lime." He dropped his stuff. I was helping him pick it up. And somehow, Mason's smile made it sound believable. Most of us didn't laugh. We just stayed quiet. Speaking up against Mason felt like asking for trouble. It was easier to pretend we didn't see anything, even though we all did. Every shove, every cruel word, every time, Ethan's face tightened but he said nothing. It all stuck with me, even when I tried to forget. One day in gym class, things almost got ugly. Coach Walters had us playing basketball. Mason's team was up against Ethan. Mason started out playing normal, but that didn't last long. He kept accidentally bumping into Ethan, elbowing him hard enough to make him stumble. Every time Ethan got the ball, Mason knocked it out of his hands. "You gonna cry about it?" Mason jeered after stealing the ball for the 5th time. Ethan said nothing. He just picked himself up and kept playing, even though his face was red and his hands were shaking a little. Then came the worst part. At the end of the game, Mason tossed the ball straight into Ethan's face. It wasn't even a pass. It was a hit. Ethan staggered back, blinking hard, and for a second it looked like he might finally lose it. But he didn't. He just turned away and walked off the court without a word. Coach Walters blew his whistle and yelled at Mason, but everyone knew he wasn't going to do much. Mason would get a warning, maybe a detention, but that was it. After gym, I saw Ethan in the locker room, sitting on the bench, his head down. His hands were clenched into fists in his lap, and for once, he didn't look calm. He looked like a volcano that was about to explode, but he forced himself to stay still. Something inside me twisted. I wanted to say something, to tell him he didn't deserve any of it, but my mouth stayed shut, just like everyone else's. Ethan didn't need our pity though. He needed something we hadn't given him: respect. We didn't know it yet, but Ethan wasn't helpless, not even close. After the basketball game, something about Ethan started to seem different, at least to the ones who were really paying attention. It wasn't that he fought back, He didn't. It wasn't that he got louder, he stayed just as quiet. It was the way he moved. During gym class, when we played dodgeball, Ethan didn't just stand there like some of us. He didn't even hide behind other kids. He moved fast. He ducked under throws like he saw them coming before they even left someone's hands. He weaved and twisted so easily that it didn't even look like he was trying. Ball after ball flew past him, but none of them hit. Even Mason noticed. "Look at Mute. Thinks he's in the Matrix or something." Mason shouted, laughing. His buddies laughed too, but it sounded a little nervous. Ethan didn't react. He just kept dodging. Some kids started whispering after that. "Did you see that move? How's he so fast? Maybe he's like secretly a ninja, or something." I watched too, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was holding back, like he could do a lot more if he wanted to, but for some reason, he didn't. Maybe he thought it would only make things worse. Maybe he didn't want to be noticed. Whatever it was, he stayed silent. But even though Ethan tried to stay invisible, Mason seemed more determined than ever to break him. He shoved Ethan harder in the halls. He slammed his locker door when Ethan was reaching. He even started stealing Ethan's backpack and tossing it down the hallway for laughs, and still, Ethan didn't fight back. There was something so strong about that, a quiet strength, that none of us really understood yet. The way he stood there, head down but shoulders squared, taking every shove without letting it break him, it made me feel two things at once, respect and guilt, because deep down, I knew Ethan could probably destroy Mason if he wanted to, but he chose not to, and that choice made him stronger than any of us. It all came crashing down on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The day had already been miserable, the sky was dark and heavy, and everyone was restless from being stuck inside during lunch. When Mason stomped into the cafeteria with his friends trailing behind him, I knew something bad was about to happen. You could just feel it, like the whole room holding its breath. Ethan sat at his usual spot in the corner, sketching quietly in his old note. He always had that notebook with him. Some people said he just scribbled nonsense in there, but I had caught a glimpse once. His drawings were amazing. Whole worlds, cool action scenes, characters with swords and armor. It was like he lived inside those pages. Maybe that's why Mason picked today to go after it. He strutted over to Ethan's table and slammed his hands down hard, making Ethan jump. "Whatcha hiding in there, Mute? Secrets?" Mason teased loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear. Ethan clutched the notebook close to his chest. "Give it back," he said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Mason just laughed and snatched the notebook out of his hands. "Aw, look. He does talk," Mason said, waving the notebook over his head. "Maybe he's got a diary in here." "Dear diary, today I got shoved into a locker again." "Give it back," Ethan said, again, his voice sharper this time. Mason ripped it open. Pages fluttered everywhere, beautiful drawings torn apart like they were nothing. Ethan froze for a second, like his body couldn't decide whether to shut down or explode, and then I saw it. For the first time since he had arrived at our school, Ethan's calm cracked, his face turned pale, then red, and his hands shook, not with fear, but with something else, anger, hurt. The whole cafeteria went silent, waiting to see what would happen. Mason smirked, crumpled one of the pages in his fist, and threw the notebook onto the floor. It should have ended there, but Mason wasn't done. He gave Ethan a hard shove, laughing. "Come on, Mute. Show us that big bad attitude you've been hiding." Ethan stumbled back, but he didn't fall. He straightened slowly, picking up his ruined notebook with careful hands. When he looked up at Mason, there was something in his eyes that made even the loudest kids go quiet. It wasn't weakness. It was something stronger. Ethan stood there for a long moment, breathing slow and deep, before turning and walking out of the cafeteria without a word. And for the first time, Mason didn't look so sure of himself. None of us knew it, but the next time Mason pushed Ethan, everything would be different. The showdown happened the very next day. School ended like normal, but there was a weird buzz in the air, Word had gotten around about what Mason did to Ethan's note. Some kids said Ethan was going to finally fight back. Others said he was just going to stay invisible like always. No one really knew for sure, but Mason was ready either way. He and his buddies waited by the bike racks, where they knew Ethan always walked home alone. A bunch of kids, way too many, hung back pretending they were just leaving slowly, but really everyone wanted to see what would happen. I was there too, even though my stomach twisted with nerves. Part of me didn't want to watch. The other part needed. Ethan came out of the building, head down, his ruined notebook stuffed under his arm. He saw Mason right away. We all saw the moment he noticed the group waiting for him. He didn't run. He didn't even flinch. He just kept walking. Mason stepped forward, grinning. "Hey, you gonna cry about your little doodles?" Ethan stopped a few feet away from him. He looked smaller than ever standing there in front of Mason and his friends, but somehow, he didn't feel small. "Leave me alone," Ethan said quietly. The way he said it made the hairs on my arms stand up. His voice wasn't shaky. It wasn't scared. It was a warning. But Mason didn't listen. He shoved Ethan hard in the shoulder, harder than ever before. "Or what?" Mason sneered. "You gonna finally hit me?" For a split second, Ethan didn't move. Then Mason lunged at him. What happened next was so fast, I almost missed it. Ethan sidestepped Mason like he knew exactly where he was going to be. In one smooth motion, he grabbed Mason's wrist, twisted it, and flipped him onto his back with a loud thud on the pavement. Gasps filled the air. Mason lay there stunned, his mouth hanging open. Ethan stepped back immediately, hands raised in front of him in a way I'd only seen in movies about karate or kung fu. He didn't look angry. He didn't look scared. He looked calm. "I told you to leave me alone," Ethan said, his voice steady. Mason scrambled to his feet, face bright red. He charged again, swinging his fist wildly. Ethan didn't even blink. He ducked under the punch and gently swept Mason's feet out from under him. Mason landed flat on his back again. This time he didn't get up right away. Nobody laughed. Nobody cheered. We were all too shocked. Ethan could have kept going. He could have humiliated Mason the way Mason had humiliated him, but he didn't. He just stood there, breathing a little harder, looking down at Mason with sad eyes, like he wasn't proud of what he did, like he wished it hadn't come to this. "I don't like fighting," Ethan said quietly, "but I know how to protect myself." He turned, picked up his notebook from where it had fallen, and walked away without looking back. Nobody tried to stop him. Not Mason, not his friends, not any of us. We just watched him go, feeling like we had all missed something important about Ethan for way too long. And somehow, Mason didn't seem so big anymore. By the next morning, everyone in school had heard about what happened at the bike racks. Nobody saw Ethan the same way anymore. At first, there were wild rumors flying around. Some kids said Ethan was secretly a black belt in karate. Others said he had fought in tournaments across the country. Someone even said he had been trained by a secret ninja clan, which was ridiculous. But that's middle school for you. The real story came out during lunch. Mr. Daniels, the assistant principal, called an assembly about bullying. He didn't name names, but everyone knew why we were there. Afterward, he pulled Ethan aside to talk to him, not to get him in trouble but to understand what had happened. Later that afternoon, word started to spread for real. The truth was even cooler than the rumors. Ethan's parents ran a martial arts school back in his old town. He had been training since he was 5 years old, not just karate, but jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, and even some kickboxing. He had won trophies, big ones. He had moved here because his parents opened a new school closer to family. The reason he kept quiet, he didn't want people to be scared of him. He didn't want to be known as the fighter. He just wanted to be a normal kid. That hit me. While the rest of us were laughing at him, ignoring him, or feeling sorry for him, Ethan was carrying all that strength inside and still choosing peace. Mason didn't bother him after that. In fact, Mason barely even looked at Ethan anymore. He kept his head down and stayed quiet in the halls for once. His friends didn't act so tough either. Things started to change after that day. Some kids apologized to Ethan, some just gave him space. A few even asked him about martial arts, curious instead of scared. And even though Ethan stayed mostly quiet, you could see the difference. He walked a little taller, he smiled a little more. The best part, he didn't have to fight to earn respect, he just had to be himself. After everything that happened, Willow Creek Middle School didn't feel exactly the same anymore, and honestly, that was a good thing. People still talked about Ethan, of course. Stories about him flipping Mason spread through every grade like wildfire. But over time, it wasn't about the fight anymore. It was about what he had chosen not to do. That was what stuck with everyone the most. Ethan never bragged. He never showed off. He just kept being himself, quiet, kind, and strong in a way that didn't need to be loud. Little by little, kids started treating him differently. Some kids asked if he could teach them a few moves. Some just nodded when they passed him in the hall. Some, like me, wished we had spoken up a lot sooner. I remember the first time I actually talked to him. It was after school one day. A few weeks later, he was sitting alone again, sketching in a brand new notebook. I walked over, my heart beating so fast it felt like it might break through my chest. "Your drawings are really good," I said. He looked up, surprised, but then he smiled. A real honest smile that lit up his whole face. "Thanks," he said. His voice was still soft, but there was no fear in it now, no hiding. We ended up talking for a long time, about his drawings, about martial arts, about how weird middle school could be. It turned out Ethan had a dry sense of humor, and a ton of crazy stories from tournaments he'd been in. He wasn't just the quiet kid or the martial arts champ. He was a real person, someone who had been trying all along, just to fit in like everyone else. By the end of the school year, Ethan had a small group of friends, not a huge crowd but real friends, the kind who didn't care about how loud you were, or how many jokes you could crack, the kind who stuck around. Mason never bothered him again. In fact, Mason changed a little too. He wasn't suddenly a nice guy, but he wasn't the school bully anymore. Maybe getting knocked down physically and in front of everyone taught him something about respect. I know it taught the rest of us something too. It's easy to judge someone when you don't know their story. It's easy to stay quiet when you see something wrong. But Ethan showed us that real strength isn't about fighting back with fists. It's about standing your ground with your heart, choosing not to hurt people even when you can't. That's the kind of strength that changes everything. And it did. At Willow Creek Middle School, thanks to one quiet kid who turned out to be stronger than all of us.